Welcome to the Clima podcast. In today's episode, I speak with Steve Hughes. I met Steve about 5 years ago when he and the family were selling up an old villa in Ponsonby and moving out to a remote rural block in Tairua. They literally camped on site through some of the North Island's worst weather while building their first tiny passive home. The next project is to build a full-size passive house on the same section. Clima inspires and educates people to create healthy, durable and energy-efficient buildings to live, learn, work and play in. Welcome, Steve. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, excellent. Great to see you again. How was your trip up from the Coromandel this morning?
I loved sitting in that Auckland traffic. I don't miss that motorway, that's for sure. Makes me appreciate certainly what I have.
How long have you been in the Coromandel for now?
3 years now. I think we landed on our bit of land and pitched our tent just over 3 years ago.
When you were growing up, what inspired you to be an architect?
Probably Lego. Love drawing, love building things, playing with Lego, probably kit set models too, that sort of thing, creating with my hands, putting stuff together. More of a build the instructions type of guy than just pull stuff together and do whatever.
When I met you the first time, we were doing a blower door test, weren't we, at your house in Kingsland? Tell us a little bit about that.
I started doing the first passive house course because we'd decided we'd move on down to a bit of land we'd bought down Coromandel. And I think I saw on LinkedIn somewhere going, hey, would anyone like a blower door test, see how it works? So I'm like, yeah, I'd love to see this, because it's where we're going, where we're heading. I'd love to see this work. Came and performed a blower door test on our renovated 1860s villa in Ponsonby, and I think it performed pretty well for the type of building it was, because I think it was around 14 air changes.
Yeah, that would sound about right,
Yep.
Which is not bad for that age build.
Yeah, but it was a howling gale through places, and it blew me away, like the airflow that was coming out of the power points where it was being sucked down through the walls from the roof space. I knew it wasn't a great detail at the floor wall junction. You could feel a bit of a breeze when just lying on the floor stretching from time to time or something, and just howled through there as well. Probably the reason for that junction is probably more the heritage overlay in Auckland.
When you were living in that house, how did it feel to live in? What was the comfort level?
Aesthetically, it was a beautifully renovated villa, a mix of the old and the new. We still had the original Kauri floors and polished concrete out the back. It was probably a really great example of how bad code minimum can be for thermal performance, I would say, knowing what I do now. We knew at the time out the back, our place, we had a lot of glass. We had a whole wall of glass sliders to the west, polished concrete floor, and that was our bedroom, and pretty cold in winter, We had the old Karcher, and you train your kid up to vacuum the windows in the morning for you. Try not to get the curtains sticking to them when you open those. In summer, it was, we were having to shut the curtains at 3 p.m. because it would just overheat. Certainly in winter, the power bill was nudging $500 a month 3-4 years ago. So power prices have definitely gone up. We were lucky and privileged enough that we could pay it without really feeling that, but there's a hell of a lot of people who don't have that option.
Because this is the thing, isn't it? Many New Zealanders just live in a cold home because literally the cost to heat it is just way too much, isn't it?
Absolutely. When you start hitting several hundred a month in power, you do start to think, when am I going to turn this on? Is it the best time? What am I going to get out of this for heating? And we know that the best way to use a heat pump is to leave it on and have it set it, let the thermostat do its job. But a lot of our housing's so leaky, it becomes expensive to do that just because it keeps turning itself on and has to keep going.
And were you heating every room or just the main living space?
One heat pump in the main living space, but certainly with the house layout, it would be heating every room. And that's just by the dissipation of the heat going through, really. There's no ducted system, there's no balanced system. It's just letting the heat in the lounge heat up with the heat pump and let it travel through. You leave a bit to chance there.
Yeah. So after that experience, what prompted you to sell up and move all the way to Pumpkin Hill?
Well, We'd been going up and down to the Coromandel a bit to visit my wife's father and his partner. And just one day, Amy said to me, she said, how about we find a bit of land down here somewhere? Did we do that? Let's look into it. And she said, no, can you work remotely? And I said, at the time I was a project director, and I go, yeah, engineer to contract, that sort of thing. Absolutely. Pick up some gigs administering contracts and only need to be there once a month or once a fortnight. You're still close enough to Auckland, Wellington, Tauranga to manage that. Even then, I've flown around the country for work previously as well. So it's quite easy. We started looking. We found this bit of land about 10 minutes north of Tairua. The first one we went and looked at, and I think we looked at it on Saturday on the way through, and then she was like, let's look at it again on the way home on Sunday. And then we went down to the local beach, down to Sailor's Grave, Takaro Bay, and the water was just so beautiful and clear, and standing in there having a swim, and I just went, yeah, okay, this one. I think we signed up in November 2019, put the deposit down, signed up, and took all of 2020 because we sold our place, and the first week we went on market was the COVID lockdown in New Zealand. Around the middle of the year, we sold and settled up at the end of 2020 and left at the end of the school year. Basically drove out after we picked our daughter up from last half day of school.
Up to basically camping, weren't you?
Yeah. We built ourselves a little outdoor area under some gazebos, and we had a big bell tent in which the three of us and our two dogs lived in. And we got underway on what I call my practice build, in doing a 30 square metre build. Studio put a lot of the passive house design elements in, and I got to play about and experiment with those, going, all right, let's go for airtightness as well. So then that leads me to ventilation, because we need to deal with the moisture inside. So got a couple of cool little through-wall self-contained units, and they work nicely in parallel with each other and keep the place nicely ventilated. And so it was a nice little practice. It works pretty well. Got the old straight aluminium windows planted on the face though, unfortunately, but that was the time and what we were prepared to put into for a bit of budget. Thermally broken aluminium was not a thing then. Even just, 2.5 years ago? Not a thing.
Crazy, eh? How fast times have moved, eh?
I made an inquiry with one of the local joinery franchises, and the response came back, no, we don't do that stuff. It's too hard. Nobody wants it. The H1 discussions, things, we already knew where it was generally going to go, and we knew windows would be part of it. How far are they going to go on walls? That sort of thing. Consultation was underway, and you're going, dude, you're not even going to be able to sell these to anyone shortly. Try to be ahead of it. You think it's tough now. It's all you're going to be able to do soon. Got underway, built a 30 square metre shed. We actually rented down in Tairua for the winter.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cold.
Yeah. Did that, finished off the studio, and then moved in there with our outdoor kitchen and composting toilet, and got underway on the build of our minor dwelling, which is 60 square metres, will be a certified passive house. We've been in that for a year now.
Tell me a little bit about the design of that and the use of the energy modelling and things. How did that all work out?
That's really how I got involved in passive house, and I'd become aware of it through the healthy homes legislation. And I was working with the Oculus guys on a big apartment development, and it came in, and James rang me and said, shit, do you realise that most of the people who rent these out need to comply with this new legislation? And we've worked it out, and it's a 5 kilowatt heat pump in each apartment unless we do passive house. And I said, tell us about passive house, yada, yada. 6 months later, we buy this bit of land and we're fully off-grid. Somebody had investigated the cost of power down to there, which was about $1,500, and it was sitting at around 230 grand. That's a no. As part of evaluating the site, I said, well, there's this thing, passive house. Let's look into it, and I'll send you some videos to Amy. And it's like, yeah, pretty cool standard. I said, because high performance, low energy, which is what we want if we're going to go off-grid and generating our own power. We've got to start from there. That fitted a bit of the philosophy of why we moved in general, was doing doing more with less and better with less, which is how we wanted to live and do that. So went, right, I'll sign up for the first course and did that and went, yeah, this is really cool and stuff. Got certified designer, so got to work on our house. Learned a lot of the things along the way that they don't teach you on the course. Because we were going for a minor dwelling, which is 50 square metres, but if you get LifeMark, the Universal Design Standard, Thames Coromandel Council give you an extra 10 square metres. That only affects your bathroom. We spent an extra 3.5 square metres to get a bonus 6 or 7 metres in the house. Yeah, it makes sense. And universal design makes sense. Level entries, light switches,
totally.
level with doors, power points at 500. It doesn't cost you. It really doesn't. And it just makes sense. We're at 60 square metres. We end up with a TFA of 52 square metres, which is really small.
For the listeners, TFA is treated floor area.
Floor area, yep. That's the floor area that counts. So it's basically excluding walls within your footprint. There's certain other spaces and rules around them, like voids under stairs, or if you've got big insets to windows or something. Sometimes you're allowed to count the space, sometimes you only count half, that sort of thing. It's all part of that wonderful Excel document that is our friend, the Passive House Planning Package. I thought, oh yeah, Passive House, great. We'll just do this, plug it in, and you go, ooh, it's getting a bit tight to make some stuff work here in places. What it really comes down to further on is the floor area was small, really small. Say we had been 75, 80 square metres, we would still have the same demands, probably around heating and PER, renewable energy demands, but our values, because PHPP metres squared per annum, we would have had much improved performance. In saying that as well, we are pre-certified to premium, which is awesome. Just working through the final certification. I've got to get my final blower door test done.
What are you hoping to achieve with that?
Under 0.6. Small floor area, small volume. Therefore, the little gaps allow for much bigger volume disappearing out of it because we're starting so small. So that's one of the pitfalls potentially of going small as well. We came in at 0.38 and there were some improvements there. The joins on the ply floor weren't taped, might get something out of that, but also there was flooring to go over that. That's done. I know we've got a great big slider. This one's just got the fairy stuff. We used to call it Shagel when I was doing petitioning. 2 of those strips of those, there's a bit of airflow through it. Then I really set myself up for this one, and this is a big learning that I would love to share with everyone. Because the only external door is a massive, great big slider, I want that shut fully during the blower door test. So you go, okay, where can we put the blower door in the frame? Put it in the window. My window is smaller than the smallest frame size for the
my
fan.
Goodness. So how did you overcome that?
I pulled the hardware off the window and I custom built out of timber my own frame. One other bonus thing there is I am allowed to seal the fabric to the exterior of the frame with tape. We didn't do that for the construction test, so that might give some improvement there. At this point of time, it's not one at which I would look to what's the lowest number I can get.
0.38 is comparable to a standard code build house. We would be expecting about 5 air changes per hour at 50 pascals. So you're coming down from there down to 0.38.
Yep. Under 0.6 is Passive House certification standard. So, and that's what I said before. What am I hoping for? Under 0.6, because that'll get me the certification now. Looking around a couple of other passive houses with the airtightness membranes on, I know mine is really well done. Everything is taped. It's all neat. It's minimal joins and laps. Looks like a patchwork quilt at times. And you just think, wow, if that's going to pass, and if it does, great. But I know mine's going to be every single bloody staple is taped over too.
We've talked about windows. We've talked about ventilation. What are the other key components that you need to think about?
We've got our super insulation, basically is looking at the framing, walls and floor. I just went, fill it up with bats, see what happened. Our wall frames are 140 mil with airtightness and a service cavity of 45 mils, which is insulated as well. I think we come in at about 12 kilowatt hours per square metre per annum for our heating demand, which is kind of the single PHPP measure that everyone refers to, and you've got to be under 15. That's a really good one there. We've got a lot of glass on the eastern side, and this was where PHPP was really good, and also Design PH, which plugs into SketchUp and gives you really quick assessments, was overheating with double glazing. So I went, let's look at triple glazing. What does that do? And I went, my overheating number just drops away straight away. So I'm like, we're going triple glazed. It's more to keep the heat out than to keep heating in for us. The sixth unofficial one is put it all together in a modelling package.
Yes.
PHPP. They're not things that you can pick and choose. And that's the danger with the H1 changes and the future ones. All of these items are going to be addressed in isolation. I think that's where you lead to issues like, I need to be airtight. So, I'll seal all my windows up and make sure they're in line with the insulation, pull them back in, tie that, let's put an airtightness membrane on. But if you don't address the balanced ventilation system, you're going to have those problems. Thermal bridge-free design. If you look at the high-performance construction details put out by Passive House Institute of New Zealand, you just look at that and you go, it makes so much sense. It really does. You can get rid of so much timber. And I know that's commonly observed in New Zealand as little pre-nail timber. Suppliers don't sell you lineal metres of timber with the amount that goes in. We built our own frames on site. I'd recommend that for anyone unless your architect and builder are prepared to get shop drawings from your pre-nail supplier and make them stick to it, because you can degrade the performance of your building elements, your walls, roofs, whatever, really quickly. I actually had a couple of builders come and become mates down there in Tairua, and they go, when are you putting your nogs in? So nogs or dwangs, your horizontal bits of timber. And I don't need them. Yes, you do. No, I don't. 3604 says he does. No, I don't. Council says you do. No, they don't. There's ways and means around it. And actually, I see Damien Grant down in Christchurch, he's late last year, he did a really good little document which he has shared, and that's looking around wall framing, the different types and the performance, but he's worked through with a quantity surveyor, and he gives you the square metre rates. A 90 mil frame with air tightness layer and a 45 mil service cavity insulated. It's a touch more expensive than just straight 140 mil framing filled in, but the performance is incredible. It's comparable and it's less than 140 mil framing. It kind of makes sense. We're looking at that. I was discussing a design with a builder for relocatable cabins the other day up here in the climate zone 1 in New Zealand, and just like, I'd be looking at 90 mil, 45 mil walls. That's what there's no need to go to 140. Whereas before seeing that, I'd just be 140 mil framing with the service cavity, just do that. Whereas, it sort of opened my eyes up a bit there, which is really nice. So thanks for that, Damien.
And after all this planning, what was it actually like to live in?
There was the relief from my wife and my family that we had a full house with working flushing toilets and indoor cooking and stuff like that. And initially, I think we were just relieved to be in a house, as most of us are when you undertake your own builds and designs and everything. But certainly over winter and over summer, as we learn and grow with the house, particularly around off-grid and power generation, it's a really beautiful, gorgeous space. Just the thermal performance, it's so comfortable. Winter, I think we put the heat pump on 3 times.
Wow.
And it wasn't like, let's run it overnight. It's like, but chilly, let's give it a bit of a boost and, let things with the ventilation system and the heat exchange that just covers off the rest from there. Most of the time cooking dinner does it. Remember, we had one really cold snap last year and was down in town at the supermarket, and the lady at the checkout says, I hope you got a fire or a heat pump going tonight. And I go, nope. And they're like, what are you going to be cold? And you're like, no, I know that with what I'm cooking for dinner, it'll be, now with the oven on, that's all the heating we need. And that's the thing. You're always going to be cooking dinner, but to have that do your heating for you by introducing that heat into the area and then having that circulate the heat recovery on the ventilation side, it distributes that. It's been really great and really observable as well when you load it up with people. It gets hot really quickly. So you go, oh, it'll run off and crank the fan up on the unit to try and balance that out a bit. Certainly summer, the last few days or last week or so, it's been really super humid. A lot of your comfort comes down to what's the humidity, because 90% humidity at 21 degrees is very different to 90% humidity at 29 degrees. Yeah, you've got a massive amount, or the air can hold a lot more water, a lot more moisture, and that's where you feel uncomfortable. You can't sleep, you can't do that. And I certainly know from comparing to our Ponsonby place that would overheat with the sun, and you just go, oh, this is so hot. That was really uncomfortable, and it was hard to shift, even with big sliders, because it's kind of trapped in the room.
What are you using for shading on this passive house?
We have a louvered pergola, because a lot of our glazing's to the east. That's one thing I've been talking clients through recently, is they go, oh, we're putting the extension out the north side, and if we put these doors here, full height doors and stuff, is that really going to be an issue? Are we going to overheat and stuff? And you go, no. I'll run you through some sun studies, but north's really easy to deal with. I can deal with that with a 600 Eve, whereas the amount of time for solar gain on your eastern and western elevations is a lot more than that northern elevation in a day. And as how long the sun's shining on it, the pitch, the angle, the azimuth, all of that. We went through that in the passive house, in the designer's course and stuff, and went, oh, that explains out the back of our house, what, with the western and all the glass. You go, no wonder. We've got a deck out to the east, which is 3 and a bit metres wide. We've got a louvered pergola, which I think it's about 8 metres long. So that covers, let's say, 2/3 of that eastern facade, and we can just adjust the louvers to fine tune. Summer, have it blocked out the whole time they're us.
I'm sure, yeah.
Winter, we can open them up and just tune them throughout the day to maximise the sun that we're getting in.
With the new H1, you were talking earlier about the fact that, yes, they've addressed insulation in the ceiling at least. They've addressed better windows, but there's no control over sun control, is there? No. There's no control of ventilation. There's no control of moisture vapor within the building moving into your insulated spaces. So, yes, they've covered a couple of points, but they haven't really looked at the whole thing as the house as a system, have they?
I think system's a good way to describe it as well, Simon. And when you start to learn and dive into it, it starts to get a bit scary where those gaps are at the moment. Ventilation, 60 square metre building, it cost $5,000. I was able to install it myself, fully balanced system, and commission it myself. That unit does up to 180 cube per hour. There's still a bigger size you can get out of it, and then there's others. So it's your lengths of the plastic ducting and the likes, so cost increase wouldn't be too much more than that. And that's a pretty good little system. It's not a large cost. We talk about increased costs. Well, you can retrofit in an envelope, but it's harder and more expensive to retrofit an envelope than to retrofit your bathroom or your kitchen, which on average we apparently do about every 7 years. And some of the money we're happy to spend on those is just eye-watering as well.
I know.
I think one of the categories in the kitchen design's the over $100,000 category.
I would imagine you'd be able to get there pretty quickly on a reasonable sized kitchen.
You can spend $30,000 on just a oven cooktop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But for some reason, that's where all the focus is at the moment, isn't it? Kitchens and bathrooms?
Kitchens and bathrooms.
And square meterage.
And square meterage, I know. Having a look around the likes of Queenstown, particularly in Millbrook, where quite literally the design briefs are, I need to be 2 metres wider than my neighbour and 5 metres longer.
Goodness.
There are guys briefing their architects on that, and you just go, awesome, bring this on. I'm going, we need to get that into Pawanui. It's nowhere near that sort of Millbrook level of cost and design. That's just the fancy stuff. It's not the bare bones of it. And I guess I'm kind of joking when going, I need that, I really want that. Okay, nah. I just want to build good, simple, healthy houses. However much you want to spend on your finishes, we can tailor up and down. Like for our passive house, we went with ply linings. I bought a B-grade faced ply from definitely a cheaper supplier. It was $56 a sheet versus $96 a sheet, where I know it's absolutely be all day. So we're looking at that, and we oiled it with a Danish oil from a guy down Motueka, and it's got a white foundation in it, but it doesn't like lime wash it, but it doesn't make it kind of that turn the pine orangey, browny too much. It just keeps it kind of neutral. You can look at those finishes. How are we going to maximise this? Though I must say that's one learning with doing ply with express negative joins. Use a hell of a lot of timber in your service cavity.
Yes, because you've got to have...
It's got to be on the back of every
on the
joint.
back of everyone, exactly.
Yep. If you're jibbing it, I just say just 400s going up the wall and run your jib horizontally. We've really got to dig into the bones. What makes a good thermal envelope? Because within reason, it doesn't matter too much what we then do once we've got the envelope right, and the volumes, how we work with the volumes, the ventilation systems and the likes. This is one of the most bizarre things I've seen published last year, was brands on LinkedIn. Apparently there's a World Ventilation Day.
Yep. Yes, when is that?
It's in the second half of the year, I think. They asked a lot of their research people and their fellows, what's your top ventilation tips for World Ventilation Day? Oh, when I'm cooking, I open the door, I open the window. I'm astounded that our foremost research unit put something out like that. I'd say maybe flip it around and go, look, these are the things we find we have to do. Human nature, this is the issues that cause it. This is how we can solve these issues on World Ventilation Day by moving to a balanced ventilation system.
I've just installed a unit 2 weeks ago at my own house as a retrofit, and it was certainly a lot more work installing it as a retrofit than as a new build, but still the differences have been phenomenal. Just having that continuous extract in the bathroom, continually having fresh air coming into your bedroom, especially in summer now, where you can close the windows. I've got a reasonably busy road next to my house. You can close the windows, have a quiet, and meanwhile, if you've got that
road
fresh
noise.
air coming in.
Living in the middle of nowhere where we can't see our neighbours.
No, that wouldn't be a
I don't
problem.
lie there going, no road noise. But if we go away and we stay somewhere, it's like, road noise. It's everywhere. Where'd this come from? How do I? But yeah, it's hard to get in and to retrofit things like that. You don't necessarily have space. It's hard to get around. Whereas you can design for that and then make sure it's built and built easily. Part of the buildability. I am one to poke brands a little bit on LinkedIn, but I did post them a bouquet for the start of the year. They had a really great article on why we should go to 140mm framing over 90, the Build magazine for December, January. So there's some good stuff there. At the same time, there's some stuff that, are you really trying to improve this?
Moving on to your new house, what have you got planned for that one?
Our first thought was, okay, where are we putting solar panels? With our site, we've got quite a nice alignment with the north and the views to the east. Right now, we have explored and committed to a sawtooth frame. Last time I looked at it, we were getting about 48 panels, so we would be generating about 22 kilowatt hours. At the moment, we generate 11 kilowatt hours maximum, certainly from solstice to solstice over the summer months. I don't even look at it really. I don't worry about it unless it's been gloomy for a day and a half, 2 days. I'm past worrying about that. That initial one, you go, where you want to track it every sort of half hour. Go, how much have we used? How much have we got left? Are we going to make it through the night? What's going to go on? Yeah, it'll be interesting transitioning into winter with it, but we live and we work well with it because we're up nearly 300 metres. We often end up in the cloud.
Oh, I see. Yep. Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yeah, we get nothing. So, yeah, the generator goes on and...
Oh, you do have a backup generator?
We do have a backup generator. Absolutely fabulous one I can recommend. Actually bonded with Toby Tilsley over the exact same model. He's got it.
Okay.
We spent about 20 minutes just go, I love that thing. It's so good. It's just petrol.
Okay.
We've got to have some form of backup there. But solar's kind of driving the original form of our new house. We've got a few little things we've wanted. It's kind of one of those almost dream house scenarios. Sawtooth forms, we're just working out how that works inside. And over a number of years, we've collected quite a bit of art and objects and stuff. So we're looking at a gallery hallway space, or the hallway down the side will double as gallery as well. So I accept the additional floor space and volume for that.
Yep, you got it.
And I'm completely justifying it in a passive house sense of allowing bigger space. And that one of the scenarios back when you actually had to do a sketch design in the passive house exam was couple with a large art collection. They wanted a gallery space. So it's like, we'll need to provide additional heating for there.
Oh, yeah.
Was the answer they were looking for, and the ventilation and that sort of thing. You're allowed to, you just got to account for it. The sawtooths teeth will provide some challenges with thermal bridges a little bit. They're not going to be straight out of the book, probably need to be modelled. And that's a benefit of going straight out of the high performance construction details book. Particularly if you use sustainable engineering as your certifier, you don't have to model thermal bridges and put them, discuss that one.
It makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Jason likes easy. That's going to be a bit of fun, internal gutters, obviously, but when we weigh up the positives and the negatives, I think giving us that solar gain for our solar panels, ultimately we still need electricity. So much of it runs off that. Even the great systems that make passive house, the ventilation, the fan on ours is 30 watts. It's barely consuming power, but it does, the performance and the payback for that 30 watts is huge. We've got a heat pump hot water cylinder. It's, 300 watts.
Compared to 3.5 kilowatts on a old style.
When we hooked up the solar, we're there and finally filled the tank and turned on the cylinder, looking at the digital readout and the temperatures, and I went back and went, shit, it's 48 degrees already. And my solar guy went, that's used 1.5 kilowatts. That's nothing just to raise tank water temperature. Well, we March, so it's probably 20 degrees or something. To raise it that, say, 28, 30 degrees with that little power is just phenomenal.
The new technologies are just bringing us so many more options, aren't they, about sensing the environment around us and actually being able to control these systems to our benefit at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And that particular brand one, you can hook up to your solar panels. So when your battery's 100%, it can divert straight to there to do the top up and that sort of thing. But we haven't needed to do that. That's diving down the rabbit hole a bit far for my electrical and solar knowledge. I didn't know if I wanted to go any further than that. One thing I have realised about those ones is a 220-litre tank and a 300-litre tank, and it's the same bloody heat pump.
But you got all that extra storage.
Yeah, so I know there has been great discussion with one particular passive house consultant and one certifier about the usable heat gains of putting your heat pump hot water cylinder within the envelope.
Yes.
And how that gets measured. I don't know how that got resolved. But, if it's generating heat and you can measure it and you put it in the envelope, as long as you account for it correctly, it'll work. And everyone's on the same page. That was one of the learnings I had with PHPP in the certification process was the heat pump I selected. Okay, what's the smallest one I can get? Because little space, little volume, I'm not going to need much. I was really late on it and I was just like, I'm just going to chuck a small heat pump in. I know it'll be way over and I'm just going to tick that box. It's up to us if we turn it on or off. I'm not going to get clever and work out towel rails or something like that if I can run that for all year round and meet my heating demand. So with PHPP, it's set up for radiators. So you need to convert your heat pump to, if UX outputs, air to water, run that through a separate calculation, and you need all the test point data. And I got all of that and I put there and we put it into the heat pump page and everything. And it spat out a COP of 6.4. And everyone went, what? You can't get that out of a heat pump? Basically went step by step going through. Yeah, no, you've done it right. That got sent up to Germany and came back and they said, yep, that's the right number.
Wow.
It stated COPs, I think, 3.4.
And that's coefficient of performance, is it?
So that's heating, not even considering cooling being up there.
Steve, we're running towards the end of our time. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with before we finish up today?
With passive house design, we just have a great opportunity to provide really beautiful, comfortable, year-round spaces With a good, knowledgeable architect or designer, it actually doesn't need to cost more, or the payback can be very quick. Chuck some solar panels on, particularly if you're grid tied. I know of someone who is getting a ridiculous payback from what he's sending back to the grid because he doesn't use what he generates. Just think about it. Investigate, put your time and thought into your envelope and the performance of that envelope and the systems within it. It's really simple. There's a heap of designers and people out here who are passionate about it, who could talk all day, as you and I can, Simon, and usually do.
Yeah.
We're just enthusiastic. We're keen. We're helpful. We just want to help people.
Thank you for your time, Stephen.
No worries. Thanks a lot,
We'll
Simon.
stick up some photographs of your home
Yeah.
in the link below, and people can have a look and
show off
learn
all
more
the
about it.
Clima stuff I used as well.
Fantastic.
Except I need one of those left-hand rolls. My Extasana's upside down. You don't sell them in left or right hand.
No, we don't. Get the branding the right way. Awesome, Steve.
All right. Thanks a lot,
Thank you very
Simon.
much. Bye then.
Cheers.
Sharing knowledge is at the heart of our strategy to make buildings better for everyone. Sign up for our podcasts to learn more about creating healthy living conditions by protecting building structures from external and internal moisture damage. Thanks for listening. Looking forward to having you with us next time.